At first glance, Far Cry Primal could easily be mistaken for the kind of game that ironically wouldn't live up to the legacy of its predecessors. Many casual fans and seasoned survivalists alike have been wary of the new installment, never shy to serve up criticism in the form of caps lock fueled rants about the setting, the combat system, and other elements of the game. While I wasn't one of those, as a longtime fan of the Far Cry series, I did have some misgivings about Primal at first. After the long stretch of time and much needed overhaul between the second and third games, 3 Far Crys in 3.5 years can understandably feel like too much too quick. But what sets Primal apart despite the obvious change of setting is a completely new approach to the survival theme that runs through the Far Cry series. Enemies are more cunning and wildlife is deadlier than ever because you can't rely on automatic weapons to keep you alive this time around. SMGs and grenades have been replaced by spears and beehives, which means outthinking your opponent can often mean the difference between life and death. There's also a wider variety of things that want you dead, from the Udom tribe in the north to the Azila tribe in the south. Each tribe has its own method for survival, with compelling backstories and unique traits that make each of them feel more a part of the world. While the former uses brute strength and cannibalism to survive, the latter is much more refined, using fire and other prehistoric technology as a means to an end. Their respective leaders are just as interesting as they are terrifying, and it's here in the narrative of the game that I saw just how much the series has grown. Truthfully, not much has changed since Far Cry 3 with regards to how you explore the map, unlock new areas, and gather supplies, but how you traverse, outplay your enemies, and the reasons for doing so are completely new, and successfully build on the foundation of the franchise without breaking it. At its core, Primal is really only about survival, but the more you play and engage with the land of Oros, the more you feel like it's not just your life at stake in this prehistoric battleground. Ubisoft has doubled down on the story element in this regard, and when executed well, Primal excels at keeping you thinking about the stakes involved. Crafting, perks, and upgrades also feel a little bit less like a dangling carrot this time. Because there are no guns and therefore no conveniently placed ammo to find throughout the game, it's up to you to craft nearly all of your supplies and weapons. Overall, there's no shortage of material in Oros, but different parts of the landmass do have different types of fauna, wildlife, and crafting goods. Some areas are also less plentiful than others, making it a good idea to keep yourself stocked up on anything you think you might need in an encounter. The key to survival here is preparedness, adding to the tension that permeates the game. The combat in Far Cry Primal is, in a word, brutal. As in, stone cold, giant spear in the face brutal. There's something far more satisfying about lobbing objects at things rather than picking them off at a safe distance with a scoped rifle. Using the elements to your advantage is also a surprisingly rewarding experience, as long as you don't get caught downwind of a forest fire you just started. There are other interesting weapons as well, like stone shards and beehives, and using a combination of these various items makes for a combat system that is as entertaining to watch as it is painful. If throwing heavy, sharp objects somehow doesn't do it for you, commanding specific wildlife to take out enemy tribesmen should provide a considerable boost to your experience. As you progress through Oros, you'll become more acquainted with the deadly wildlife that it's home to. Your role as the Beastmaster does go beyond simply giving orders, though. You can control owls to scan nearby areas, and you can ride specific animals for traversal or for combat. This brings another welcome change to the Far Cry formula, given that there is a lot to explore. Using wildlife to your advantage, and more than simply as a distraction, it's a key part of Primal's gameplay, making it another fresh take on the previous game's offerings. The world of Oros is certainly large, but it's not without its drawbacks. While there is a lot to do, you're often being pushed in a single linear direction, and any missions you happen to pick up on the side will almost always drag you back to the main story objective. While games like Fallout have winding paths and many different characters to get acquainted and do missions with, Far Cry Primal can sometimes feel like it's holding back. For a game that's really about building a tribe and maintaining a community, it does occasionally backpedal into a very single-player, single-focused experience. The importance of some characters simply disappears after a few of their missions are completed. Despite the drawbacks, Primal does feel very much at home with the standards set in 2012 by Far Cry 3. Since then, there have been a number of improvements and structural changes to keep the series fresh. While the latest installment doesn't necessarily rewrite the playbook, it does dare to be different. I just wish there were a dinosaur or two around. Thank you for watching our review of Far Cry Primal. If you like what we're doing, go ahead and punch that subscribe button. Also, stay tuned for another special episode of Tips from the Wasteland!